Hey guys, it's Ayla. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another book video because you guys know I'm a big book girly, and today we're going to be talking about my top 10 book recommendations. If you are ever going to take one of my book recommendations, it better be one of the ones from this video because these are like my top 10 favorite books that I recommend to people, and just some of these I've read in the past year, so maybe you haven't heard me talk about them recently. One of these I even read in the past month. So I'm really excited to just get into this and show you guys my top 10 books. Jumping right into it, I think we all know, because this is one of the most popular books going around right now, it is Fourth Wing. Guys, this book is just, wow, this book is probably one of the best books I have read ever in my life. Whether you are into fantasy already or have never read fantasy in your life, it doesn't matter, read this anyway. Basically, the plot of this book is it's about this girl named Violet. How do I even explain this? Kind of like a boarding school, but you're learning to fly a dragon, but it's like really deadly. A third of the class dies in the first year. There are so many cliffhangers, so many plot twists. This book just had me laughing my ass off, smiling, grinning the entire time. Like, I kid you not, when I set this book down, I did not know what to do with my life. Like, I genuinely was just like, I thought, I don't know. Physically pains me to know that these characters are not real. But yeah, this book is unmatched, literally unmatched. I don't know what else to say about that. The male main character in this book, this is peak enemies to lovers. Like, people say enemies to lovers is in so many books, but this is enemies to lovers. This is enemies to lovers. Like, I cannot express to you how good this book is. Just read it. That's all I have to say. I actually have a book podcast where I talk about books with my best friends. It's called Let's Talk About Books Pod, and I have that link down below as well. And we are going to be talking about Fourth Wing in the next episode, so make sure you are following my podcast so you can catch up, hear what we have to say about this. It's going to be a good episode. This book is not talked about at all on the internet, but this is literally one of my favorite standalone books of all time, and one of the books that really just got me to love romance. This is Anna and the French Kiss, and this is actually the special edition cover with the spade edges. I'm obsessed with this cover. Basically, Anna and the French Kiss is about this girl named Anna, and she ends up going to the American School of Paris. She has a romance there, and it's all about her like exploring Paris and finding true love and making friends at boarding school. And I will just say, this book, it just makes me this is a comfort read for me. Like, whenever I get really sad, I just read the first couple chapters of this book and I feel better again. So freaking cute. And if you just need like a simple little romance, not too much to dive into, this is a really nice book. There are a couple spin-offs that you don't have to read that are part of the series, which are alright, but not as good as this first one. Next up, this book is the one that I read most recently. I actually read this week, and that is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Guys, where do we even start with this? This is like my first official review on the internet about this book. This book is like if the Hunger Games and the Selection had a baby and it had enemies to lovers romance. That is this book. But I just really enjoyed it. I thought the banter was great. I thought that the plot twists were great. I thought it was really well done, especially because this is her debut novel. I think if you want to get into fantasy, but you don't really like fantasy, this is the book to go for, because there's not like that many fantasy aspects in the book. It's more centered around the romance, I would say, but it is just really good. There's two brothers. She lives in a palace. She goes through trials, kind of like the Hunger Games. It's literally so freaking good. Also, this is a thickie. Like, this is a nice book. Like, you don't finish it in one sitting, and I almost wanted to. So I think it's a really nice book. And also, she has a novella coming out in April, and the next book in the series is coming out in July, so I'm so excited and looking forward to that. Okay, next is another really popular book on the internet, and I was debating putting this book in this video because I know that it has been recommended a lot and almost overhyped, but personally, I believe that this book deserves all of the hype that it got. A Court of Thorns and Roses. ACOTAR, you probably know it as ACOTAR. This series is just so peak, and I obviously have to recommend the first book, but this is definitely the worst book in the series. You have to get through the first book. Basically, this is a fantasy romance series. I feel like it's fantasy, but mostly focused on the romance. Another great series by Sarah J Maas is Throne of Glass, but I wouldn't recommend that series unless you are like super into fantasy, because it is hard to get through otherwise. The first time I read Throne of Glass, it was really hard for me to get into, so I had to take some time, read some more fantasy, and then get back into it, and then I loved it. This book, it is literally chef's kiss. It's a whole fantasy world, really hot men, found family. The character development in these books is just fantastic, especially in the 5th book. So I would recommend a million times over, because these books, I think about them all the time, literally all the time. And also, so many people have read this book that you are going to know someone that you can talk about this book with, and if you don't, you can talk about it with me. So there you go, read this fucking book. Okay, this next book, this is one of my favorite books series now of all time. Like, I love this series so much, but I do want to preface this by saying that this book is not for everyone. Addicted to You. Now, if you are a big fan of like found family, close friendships, those sort of tropes, you are going to love this series. There are 10 books in the series, and by the end of it, I was so freaking attached to every single character that it was just so freaking good. The series takes you through their whole lives together. There's 6 main characters, 3 couples, and it is just a fantastic read. Now, the reason I'm saying this book is not for everybody is because these books deal with really heavy addiction. The main character, Lauren Hale, is an alcoholic, and the other main character, Lily Hale, is a sex addict. This is something that is not talked about in books typically. It is worth it. The romance in this book alone is really good. The character can be a little bit annoying in the first book, but you have to remember she's an addict. They both are. And there's so much growth, so much development in this series. I would say that if you like romance books, you are going to eat this up either way. So I would recommend this a million times over, and I just think it is such an incredible series, Next book is actually the book that got me to love reading. I read it for the first time when I was in 6th grade, and I have read the series a million times since then. I've actually mentioned it in this video, and that is The Selection. I adore this book series, and this was my favorite book series for a very long time. This particular copy, my best friend Tess actually annotated for me, which is so fucking cute. Here's her annotations. She's so cute. I love you, Tess. But, okay, let me tell you what this book is about. This book is set in the future where there is a monarchy and everyone is labeled a number. There's 1s, and then it goes all the way down to 8s. And depending on your number, that is basically your class. So the jobs that you're able to get, the things that you're able to eat, that sort of thing. But when the prince wants to get married, he has what's called a selection, and they randomly draw girls from every province, and they get to come to the castle, and basically the bachelor vie for his hand in marriage and learn how to become a queen if they are chosen. The main character, her name is America, and she is a baddie. Like, she is a baddie. She is one of my favorite main characters of all time, and I just fucking adore her. There's also a love triangle in this book. There's so many other tropes and other characters that are just some of my favorite characters of all time. These books are just so sweet. If you love a good dystopian romance, this is the book for you. Like, this is the book for you. Trying to get into reading, this is the book for you. Like, this is a really nice, easy read. However, if you are sitting there reading heavy fantasies, maybe this is not the book for you, because it is a lightly written romance dystopian book. So with that being said, I love this book. It is such a comfort book for me, and I think that if you are wanting to get into reading or you love romance, anyone can read this book. So freaking good, and the other books in the series are really good as well. The next book is probably my favorite standalone book of all time. I read this a couple years ago, and Taylor Jenkins Reid has become my favorite author of all time, specifically because of this book, but all of her books are so fucking fantastic, and you should read all of them. This book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Wow. This book changed my life, and let me just say that this book is so fucking good, you guys. Basically, this book is about an interviewer, a reporter, who is interviewing Evelyn Hugo and talking about her rise to fame and her entire life and writing a book about her. So it goes back and forth from the interviewer talking to her to like the story of like what was happening in her life. She married 7 different men, and this is the story about every single husband, the story of how she got with them, her rise to fame, and just her entire life. And it is one of the best books I have ever read in my life. Gonna rope you in and you're gonna eat that shit up. I'm just telling you, you're gonna eat that shit up. Also, some of her books that I love are KYOTO is Back and Daisy Jones and the Six, but all of her books are so good. I would recommend literally any of them. She is my favorite author and her writing is just, wow, it's incredible. Okay, this next one is gonna be a little controversial. Colleen Hoover is a great author for getting into reading. Maybe not only reading Colleen Hoover. I did have a phase. I do own almost all of her books. There is one of her books that I will always recommend, no fucking hate, because this book, it made me feel crazy. Like, I genuinely could not set this book down, and everyone that I've recommended it to has really enjoyed it. So I continue to recommend it. And that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is kind of a thriller, kind of a romance, but more of a thriller, and it is so freaking good. I don't want to tell you what it's about because I don't want to spoil it in any way, but let me just say it is so good. You will not know what you're getting into. Literally just from the first page. What is the first line? Here's the first line, okay? I hear the crack of his skull before the splattering of blood reaches me. I'm just gonna leave you with that. This is peak dystopian. Like, this is peak. Who I have recommended this to that read it absolutely adored it. I wish I had read this series sooner. I read it at the beginning of last year and I wish I'd read it sooner because it is so good and I already want to reread it. The first book takes a little bit to get into depending on the person, but the entire series is really good. There are a lot of mixed reviews on it, but personally, I really enjoyed it. I think this is a really good dystopian romance. And yeah, all of the characters in this book are just so good. Found family trope in here, 6 or 7 books with a couple novellas as well. So this is a really nice series. This is about a girl named Juliet who is in prison at the beginning of the book. She has a power where if she touches anyone, she will kill them, basically torture them just by touching them with her bare skin. So she's locked up, but she gets a roommate and she hasn't talked to anyone in like years. So that's what this is about. Also, the best book boyfriend of all time is in this series, so I would always recommend, if you love book boys, you gotta read this series. It's just, it is what it is. Okay, here's the last book, and if you follow me on Book Talk, you will know that I talk about this book all the time. Like, this is a book that I love. Again, it's not for everyone. If you ever were on Wattpad or ever read a fan fiction in your life, this is a book for you, okay? This book is called Crave, and the first time I read this series, I was absolutely flabbergasted, but every single book in this series, I loved. I loved it so much. They are all long reads. These books are about a girl named Grace. She goes to boarding school after her parents pass away, and she finds out that the boarding school is actually a paranormal school, and she's the only human there. It is full of a bunch of different paranormals. And you know what? If you want a book about paranormals, this is the book to go for. It is... The love interests in this book are just peak, like literally peak. Like, one of my favorite book boys of all time is in this book. Yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say about that. But yeah, this series is really, really good, and I have talked about this a lot on my podcast as well as Book Talk. Yeah, this is a really nice book, and both of my best friends read the series, and my mom read the series, and they all loved it. Honestly, this book reminds me a lot of Fourth Wing. But I did read this book first, so when I read Fourth Wing, it reminded me so much of this book. Fourth Wing is like a grown-up version of this book. This is like high school, and then Fourth Wing is like college. But they are very similar in a lot of aspects, at least to me. I haven't heard anyone else make that connection. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book as well. I would say, out of all of these books, the book that I would recommend the most is definitely Fourth Wing, because, wow, it just deserves the hype. It's an amazing book. Anyway, my bestie's coming over so we can watch The Bachelor, so I hope you guys are having the best day ever. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're not already, and stay tuned because I post videos every single Sunday. Yeah. Bye, guys.